Captain Jinho sat in his command chair, watching the stars through the main screen of the Indomitable Spirit. His ship was not the biggest or the fastest in the human fleet, but it was reliable. That was what mattered most in deep space. The exploration mission had been quiet for 3 weeks now. Too quiet, some of his crew said. "Captain," Lieutenant Mireille called from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jinho could hear something underneath it. "I'm picking up some strange readings on long-range sensors." Jinho turned his chair toward her. "What kind of strange?" "Big. Really big. Multiple contacts, moving fast." Mireille's fingers flew over her controls. "Sir, they're not showing up on any of our ship databases." Commander Do Hyun looked up from his tactical station. "Unknown ships in this sector? That's impossible. We mapped this area last year." "Nothing's impossible out here," Jinho said. He stood up and walked over to Mireille's station. "Show me what we have." The screen changed to display sensor data. Jinho felt his stomach drop. 12 massive objects were moving toward them at incredible speed. Each one was easily 10 times the size of his ship. The energy signatures were unlike anything he had ever seen. "How long until they reach us?" Jinho asked. 15 minutes at current speed," Mireille replied. Jinho nodded. "Send a message to the other ships in our group. Tell them to maintain formation, but be ready for anything." The Indomitable Spirit was leading a small exploration group. Besides his ship, there were 2 science vessels and a supply ship. Not much of a fleet against whatever was coming their way. "Captain," Do Hyun said, "should we power up weapons?" "Not yet. We don't want to look hostile." Jinho returned to his chair. "But have everything ready just in case." The minutes passed slowly. Everyone on the bridge was quiet, watching the sensor display as the unknown ships got closer. When they were only a few thousand kilometers away, something amazing happened. Space itself seemed to bend and twist. One moment there was nothing but stars, and the next moment 12 enormous ships appeared around the human fleet. They had just materialized out of nowhere. "Well," Do Hyun said quietly, "that's new." The alien ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. They looked like they were made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange patterns of blue energy ran along their hulls. Each ship was shaped like a blade, sharp and deadly. "Looking! Incoming transmission," Mireille announced. "It's on all frequencies." "Put it through," Jinho ordered. The main screen flickered and showed a creature that made several crew members gasp. It looked like a cross between a lizard and a dinosaur, standing upright on 2 legs. Its skin was dark green with lighter patches, and its eyes were yellow with vertical pupils. When it opened its mouth to speak, rows of sharp teeth were visible. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Vorthak Empire," the creature said. Its voice was deep and seemed to echo. "You are representatives of the species called humans. I am Captain Jinho of the Earth ship Indomitable Spirit," Jinho replied. "We come in peace." Admiral Kethvar made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was not pleasant. "Peace? How primitive. You will listen carefully, human. I speak for the Galactic Dominion, which rules over 47 species across this galaxy." Jinho kept his face calm, but inside he was thinking fast. This was first contact with an alien species, and it was not going well. "Your species has been observed," Kethvar continued. "You have developed faster-than-light travel without permission from the Dominion. This is not allowed." "Permission?" Jinho could not help himself. The word just slipped out. "Yes, permission. All technology belongs to the Dominion. All worlds belong to the Dominion. All species serve the Dominion." The alien's yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "You will surrender your ships. You will provide all technical data about your civilization. You will submit to Dominion rule." Jinho looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at the screen with expressions of shock and disbelief. He turned back to the alien admiral. "And if we refuse?" Jinho asked. "Then you will be destroyed. Your worlds will be burned. Your species will be extinct." Kethvar leaned forward. "This is not a negotiation, human. This is how the galaxy works. The strong rule the weak." Jinho was quiet for a moment. He could feel his crew watching him, waiting to see how he would respond to this threat. The logical thing to do would be to stall for time, maybe try to escape. but something about the alien's arrogant tone bothered him. "Admiral Kethvar," Jinho said slowly, "did you just tell me that you want us to surrender our technology? I gave you an order, not a request." Jinho felt something building up inside him. It started as a small tremor in his chest and grew stronger. His shoulders began to shake slightly. "Captain?" Mirai asked with concern. "Are you all right?" Jinho pressed, his lips together trying to control himself. But it was no use. A small chuckle escaped from his mouth. Then another. Within seconds, he was laughing out loud. The bridge crew stared at their captain in amazement. Here they were, surrounded by 12 massive alien warships being threatened with extinction, and their captain was laughing. "You find this amusing?" Admiral Kethvar's voice was dangerous now. Jinho wiped tears from his eyes and tried to compose himself. "I'm sorry, Admiral, it's just—" He started chuckling again. "You want us to surrender our technology to you? I do not understand your reaction, human." "Of course you don't." Jinho shook his head, still smiling. "You show up here with your pretty ships and your fancy energy beams, and you think that makes you superior. Our technology is clearly more advanced than yours. Your ships are primitive metal constructs powered by chemical reactions." "You're absolutely right," Jinho agreed. "Our ships are primitive. We still use kinetic weapons. We still use metal hulls. We still use chemical rockets for some things." He leaned back in his chair. "And you think that means we're weak?" "Admiral D." Kethavar's eyes narrowed. "Are you saying you are not?" "I'm saying, Admiral, that you have no idea what you're dealing with." Jinho's smile was not entirely friendly now. "You see primitive technology and assume primitive minds. You see simple construction and assume simple thinking. Your point, human? My point is that you've made a mistake. A big one." Jinho stood up from his chair. "You think technology makes you powerful, but technology is just tools. What matters is not what tools you have, but how you use them." Do-hyun cleared his throat. "Captain, should I mention that our primitive scanners have been analyzing their ships this whole time?" "That would be premature, Commander." Jinho was still smiling. "Though I suppose it wouldn't hurt to mention that their energy weapons seem to be designed for maximum visual effect rather than maximum damage." Admiral Kethavar's head snapped back slightly. "You dare analyze Dominion technology?" "We analyze everything, Admiral. It's what humans do. We look at problems and figure out solutions. We take things apart to see how they work. We ask questions, like what if and why not and how can we do this better? Inferior minds asking inferior questions. Maybe." Jinho shrugged. "But here's a question for you, Admiral. If we're so inferior and our technology is so primitive, why does it take 12 of your ships to threaten 4 of ours?" The alien admiral was quiet for a moment. "Because the Dominion believes in overwhelming force. Or because you're not as confident as you pretend to be." Jinho sat back down. "Tell me, Admiral, how many species has the Dominion conquered?" 47 served the Dominion. "And how many of those fought back?" Another pause. "Resistance is futile against Dominion might." "That's not an answer." Jinho's smile was getting wider. "How many actually fought back, Admiral? How many made—" "You work for it?" When Kethvar did not answer, Jinho nodded. "That's what I thought. You're used to species that see your big ships and surrender immediately. You're used to civilizations that value their lives more than their freedom. And humans do not? Oh, we value our lives plenty. We just value our freedom more." Jinho looked around his bridge at his crew. "And we have a real problem with bullies." Admiral Kethvar's image flickered slightly. "You will regret this attitude, human." "Maybe, but probably not." Jinho leaned forward. "You want to know what's really funny, Admiral? You came here expecting to find a primitive species that would be easy to conquer. Instead, you found humans. And humans, well..." He started chuckling again. "We're definitely primitive, but we're the kind of primitive that's survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own stupidity for thousands of years. Your defiance will cost you everything." "Our defiance is everything, Admiral. It's what makes us human." Jinho stood up again. "So here's my answer to your demand. We will not surrender our ships, we will not provide you with our technology, and we will definitely not submit to your rule. The alien admiral's yellow eyes blazed. "Then you have chosen extinction." "We've chosen to be human," Jinho replied. "Which, from your perspective, might be the same thing." He was still smiling. "End transmission." The screen went black. The bridge was silent for a moment. "Well," Do-hyun said finally, "that could have gone better?" Jinho was still chuckling softly. "Could it, Commander? Could it really?" The Galactic Council Chamber was the most impressive structure in known space. Built on Nexus Prime, the neutral world at the center of the galaxy, it stretched upward for nearly a kilometer. The walls were made of crystal that caught and reflected light from 47 different star systems, creating a rainbow effect that was supposed to represent unity among the species of the Dominion. Dr. Yeji had never seen anything like it. As the human ambassador to the Galactic Council, she was one of only 3 humans who had ever set foot in this place. The other 2 were Admiral Tae-hoon, who stood beside her in his crisp Earth Defense Force uniform, and a translator who had died of old age 2 years ago. "Remember," Admiral Tae-hoon whispered to her as they walked toward their assigned seats, "we're here to observe and learn. Don't commit to anything." Yeji nodded. As a xenobiologist, she had spent years studying alien life forms, but studying them from samples and videos was very different from meeting them face to face. The chamber was filled with creatures that seemed to come from every nightmare and fantasy humanity had ever imagined. There were the Vorthak, the reptilian species that had first contacted humans 6 months ago. Admiral Kethvar was sitting with their delegation, his yellow eyes scanning the crowd. Near them sat the ethereals, tall and thin beings that seemed to be made of pure energy contained in translucent bodies. Their leader, Garen, was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Across the chamber were the crystalline collective, living rocks that communicated through harmonic vibrations. Next to them were the swarm, insect-like creatures that moved as one mind. And everywhere, scattered throughout the massive chamber, were dozens of other species that Yeji had only read about in reports. Council Speaker Threndos called the session to order. He was a Vorthak, like Admiral Kethvar, but older and larger. His voice echoed through the chamber as he spoke. "We gather today to discuss the problem of the humans," he announced. "This species has appeared in our galaxy without permission. They have developed faster-than-light travel without authorization. They have established colonies on worlds that belong to the Dominion." Yeji felt her face grow warm. The way he said problem made it sound like humans were some kind of disease. "Furthermore," Threndos continued, "they have shown disrespect to Dominion authority. When given proper orders to surrender their technology and submit to our rule, they responded with mockery." Admiral Kethvar stood up. "Speaker, I request permission to present evidence of human primitiveness." Permission granted. The air above the center of the chamber shimmered, and a 3-dimensional image appeared. It showed a human starship, one of the exploration vessels from Captain Jinho's fleet. "Observe the crude construction," Kethvar said, pointing at the image. "Metal hull plating held together with simple welding, chemical propulsion systems that waste enormous amounts of fuel, kinetic weapons that fire physical projectiles instead of energy beams." The image changed to show the inside of the ship. "Their computer systems are primitive circuits and processors. Their life support relies on mechanical pumps and filters. They even still use physical controls instead of mental interfaces." Murmurs of disgust and amusement rippled through the chamber. Yeji could hear various aliens making comments in their own languages. The universal translator in her ear was working overtime. "Barbaric," said one voice. "How do they even survive in space?" asked another. "It's almost cute, in a pathetic way," said a third. Kethvar raised his hand for silence. Yet despite their obvious inferiority, these humans refused to acknowledge Dominion authority. When I offered them the chance to serve the galaxy's rightful rulers, their captain laughed at me. Laughed? Speaker Threndos sounded shocked. "A primitive dared to show such disrespect?" "Not just disrespect, Speaker. Mockery. He suggested that our superior technology was somehow inadequate compared to their crude tools." Garen, the ethereal leader, spoke up. His voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Perhaps the humans do not understand their place in the galactic order. Many primitive species require education before they can properly serve. I believe they understand perfectly, Kethvar replied. They simply choose defiance over wisdom, Speaker Threndos nodded gravely. Then they must be taught. The Dominion has rules for a reason. Order must be maintained. Admiral Tehun leaned over to whisper in Yeji's ear. Here it comes. The Council will now hear formal demands regarding the human problem, Threndos announced. First, all human expansion beyond their current territory must cease immediately. Second, all human faster-than-light technology must be surrendered to Dominion scientists for analysis and control. Third, all human worlds must accept Dominion oversight to ensure proper behavior. He paused, looking directly at Yeji and Admiral Tehun. Fourth, the human military must be disbanded and replaced with Dominion peacekeepers. Fifth, all human scientific research must be supervised by Dominion authorities. And finally, the human government must formally acknowledge Dominion sovereignty and request protection status. The chamber was silent as the words sank in. Yeji felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. These aliens were not just demanding surrender. They were demanding the complete elimination of human independence. The human representatives will now respond to these reasonable demands, Threndos said. Yeji stood up slowly. Every eye in the chamber was on her, and she could feel the weight of their attention. Some looked curious, others looked amused, and a few looked like they were waiting for entertainment. Honored Speaker, she began, her voice carrying clearly. Through the chamber's acoustics, I thank the Council for this opportunity to address such a distinguished gathering. Spare us the pleasantries, human, Kethvar interrupted. Do you accept the demands or not? Yeji felt something familiar building up in her chest. It was the same feeling she had experienced as a child when bullies at school had demanded her lunch money. The same feeling she had felt in graduate school when a professor had told her that women were not smart enough to be scientists. The same feeling she had felt when politicians had said that humans were not ready for space exploration. Admiral Kethvar, she said, covering her mouth with her hand. Did you just say that these demands are reasonable? I did. The Dominion is being generous by offering protection instead of simply destroying your species. Yeji's shoulders began to shake slightly. She pressed her lips together, trying to maintain diplomatic composure. But it was getting harder, by the second. Dr. Yeji? Admiral Tehun asked quietly. Are you all right? I'm fine, she managed to say, though her voice sounded strained. It's just... She took a deep breath and looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching her. I'm sorry, honored council members. I'm trying very hard not to laugh at you. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs and angry hissing sounds. Speaker Threndos slammed his gavel-like device on his podium. Silence! He roared. Human! You dare show disrespect in this sacred chamber? I'm not showing disrespect, Speaker. I'm showing amusement. Yeji lowered her hand from her mouth, and now she was openly smiling. You want to know what's funny? You've spent all this time talking about how primitive we are, how crude our technology is, how inferior our minds are, and then you demand that we give you our technology. Your technology belongs to the Dominion by right, Kethvar said. Really? Our primitive, crude, inferior technology? Yeji's smile was getting wider. If it's so primitive, why do you want it? Garen floated forward slightly. Perhaps the human does not understand. We do not want your technology for ourselves. We want to control it to prevent you from causing damage. Damage to whom? To yourselves, primarily. Primitive species often destroy themselves with technology they cannot properly understand. I see. Yeji nodded thoughtfully. So you're trying to protect us from ourselves. How thoughtful. She looked around the chamber again. Tell me, honored council members, how many species in the Dominion develop their own faster-than-light travel? The chamber fell silent. After a moment, Speaker Threndos said, That information is not relevant to current discussions. I think it's very relevant. See, I did some research before coming here. Yeji pulled out a small device and consulted it. According to the Dominion's own historical records, only 7 species in the entire galaxy have ever independently developed FTL technology. 7 out of 47. Admiral Tehun raised an eyebrow. He had not known this fact. The rest, Yeji continued, were given the technology by the Dominion after they submitted to Dominion rule, which means that 40 species in this chamber are sitting here calling humans primitive when they never even figured out space travel on their own. The angry murmurs were getting louder now. Several aliens were on their feet, shouting in their native languages. Furthermore, Yeji said, raising her voice to be heard over the noise, humans developed FTL travel in less than 400 years after we learned to fly. According to these same records, it took the Vorthak over 2,000 years to achieve the same thing. Enough! Kethvar roared. Your insolence will not be tolerated. My insolence? Yeji was openly laughing now. You're the ones who invited us here to give us demands. You're the ones who think superior technology makes you superior beings. You're the ones who assume that different means inferior. Speaker Threndos was. The human colony of New Busan looked exactly like what the Vorthak expected from a primitive species. The orbital scans showed simple metal buildings, basic agricultural fields, and what appeared to be a small spaceport with only a few landing pads. The population was only 50,000, scattered across a continent that could easily support 10 times that number. Admiral Kethvar studied the tactical display from his flagship's command center. Around him, his officers were conducting final preparations for what they expected to be a quick demonstration of Dominion power. The humans chose to be defiant, Kethvar said to his second-in-command, Captain Yultar. Now they will learn the price of defying the Dominion. Should we target the military installations first, Admiral? Yultar asked. Kethvar looked more closely at the scans. What military installations? I see no defensive structures, no weapon emplacements, no shield generators. This is barely even a colony. Perhaps the humans have hidden their defenses? From Dominion scanners? Impossible. Kethvar waved a clawed hand dismissively. No, Captain. What we see is what exists. A primitive settlement with primitive people living primitive lives. Down on the surface of New Busan, Colonel Siwoo was having a very different conversation with his staff in what the aliens thought was a simple administrative building. In reality, the building was the entrance to an underground command complex that stretched for several kilometers in all directions. Alien fleet in orbit, sir, reported his tactical officer. 12 ships, same configuration as the ones that confronted Captain Jinho's group. Any sign they've detected our real infrastructure? Siwoo asked. Negative, sir. Their scans are only reading surface installations. They have no idea about the underground levels. Siwoo nodded with satisfaction. Every human colony was built the same way, with the real settlement deep underground and only basic structures on the surface. It was a lesson learned from centuries of dealing with natural disasters, hostile environments, and the occasional war. What about our defensive systems? Engineer Hyejin looked up from her console. All railgun batteries are online and ready. Missile silos are loaded and targeted. The manufacturing complexes are running at full capacity. And our people? Nara, the civilian administrator, smiled grimly. Every colonist is at their assigned defensive position. The children and elderly are in the deep shelters. Everyone else is ready to fight. Siwoo looked around the command center. These aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. Every human colony was essentially a fortress, and every colonist was trained for war. It was not because humans were naturally violent, but because space was dangerous, and humanity had learned to be prepared for anything. Sir, the communications officer called out, incoming transmission from the alien fleet. Put it through. The main screen showed Admiral Kethvar's reptilian face. He looked even more arrogant than usual. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Vorthak Empire. You will identify yourself, human. Colonel Siwoo, commanding officer of New Busan Colony. What can I do for you, Admiral? You can surrender immediately. Your world has been selected for a demonstration of Dominion power. If you submit now, only your military leaders will be executed. If you resist, every human on this planet will die. Siwoo was quiet for a moment, studying the alien's face. Admiral, are you familiar with human history? I have no interest in the primitive past of your species. That's unfortunate. You might have learned something useful. Siwoo leaned back in his chair. For example, you might have learned that humans don't respond well to threats. Your response is irrelevant. You have no choice in this matter. Everyone has choices, Admiral. The question is whether they're willing to live with the consequences. Siwoo gestured to someone off-screen. Hyejin, would you please roll out the welcome mat for our guests? Admiral Kethvar looked confused. Welcome mat? What does this mean? It means, Admiral, that if you want a demonstration of power, we're happy to provide one. Siwu smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. You just might not like what you learn. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. Admiral, Captain Yultar asked. Your orders? Begin the attack. Target the population centers first. These humans need to learn respect. High above New Busan, the Vorthak fleet moved into attack formation. Their ships were works of art, sleek and deadly, with energy weapons that could slice through mountains. They had crushed resistance on dozens of worlds with these same ships. The first energy beam lanced down from orbit, targeting what appeared to be the colony's main administrative complex. The beam struck the building and vaporized it completely, leaving nothing but a crater in the ground. Direct hit, reported Yultar. The administrative center has been destroyed. Excellent. Target the spaceport next. But before the second shot could be fired, something unexpected happened. The ground around the crater began to move. Panels of earth and rock slid aside, revealing metal structures underneath. And from those structures came return fire. The first railgun round hit Kethavar's flagship at nearly a quarter of the speed of light. The kinetic impact was enormous, shaking the massive ship and overloading several systems. Alarms began blaring throughout the vessel. What was that? Kethavar demanded. Kinetic impact, sir. Something struck our main hull. Impossible! These primitives don't have weapons that can reach orbit. As if to prove him wrong, a dozen more railgun rounds slammed into his ship and the vessels around it. The Vorthak shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were much less effective against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Admiral! Yultar's voice was strained. We're reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. There are weapon emplacements everywhere. The tactical display updated, showing the real picture of New Busan colony. What had appeared to be a simple agricultural settlement was actually a fortress world. Underground complexes stretched across the entire continent, connected by tunnels and protected by armor plating. Railgun batteries, missile silos, and shield generators were hidden beneath what had looked like farmland. How is this possible? Kethvar whispered. Down on the surface, Colonel Siwu was coordinating the defense from his command center. The aliens had made a classic mistake. They had assumed that what they could see was all that existed. All batteries, continue firing, he ordered. Target their engines and weapons systems. Let's see how tough these pretty ships really are. Engineer He-Jin was grinning as she monitored the defensive systems. Sir, their shields are designed for energy weapons, not kinetic impact. Our railguns are punching right through. What about their return fire? Minimal damage so far. Their energy beams are impressive to look at, but they're not very efficient. Too much energy wasted on visual effects, not enough focused on actual destruction. Nara looked up from her communications console. Sir, I'm getting reports from across the colony. Civilian manufacturing complexes are coming online. We'll have fresh ammunition and replacement parts within the hour. This was another thing the aliens had not expected. Human colonies were designed to be self-sufficient. Every settlement had the capability to manufacture everything from food to starship components. It was a necessity when you were light years away from Earth. In orbit, Admiral Kethvar was learning that his primitive opponents were full of surprises. His fleet was taking serious damage from weapons that supposedly should not exist, and the humans showed no signs of surrendering. Admiral, Captain Yultar reported, the cruiser Domination has lost main engines. The destroyer Swift Death is reporting hull breaches on multiple decks. How are they doing this? They're primitives. Their weapons appear to be simple kinetic accelerators, but they are incredibly powerful. And they have a lot of them. Another wave of railgun fire erupted from the planet, and this time several shots found critical targets. One of the Vorthak destroyers lost all power and began drifting, helplessly. A cruiser's weapon systems were completely destroyed by a direct hit to its main gun. Sir, the communications officer called out, incoming transmission from the planet! Put it through, Kethvar snarled. Colonel Siwu appeared on screen again, and he looked completely calm despite the battle raging around his planet. Having problems, Admiral? Siwu asked politely. Your defenses will not save you, human. We have reinforcements coming. I'm sure you do. But I have to ask, is this really the best you can do? Because I have to tell you, we're a little disappointed. Kethavar's yellow eyes blazed with fury. Disappointed? Well, yes. See, we've heard so much about Dominion superiority, about your advanced technology and overwhelming power. But your ships seem to be having trouble with our primitive weapons. Your weapons are more advanced than our intelligence indicated. Our weapons are exactly what they appear to be, metal projectiles fired by electromagnetic acceleration. We've been using railguns for over 200 years. Siwu shrugged. The only difference is that we've had time to make them really good at what they do. This was the heart of the alien misunderstanding. They saw human technology as primitive because it was simple. But simple did not mean ineffective. Humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of throwing things, really hard at other things. You cannot win this fight, Kethavar said. Even if you destroy my fleet, others will come. Probably, but here's... Captain Seojin felt the deck shake under his feet as another Vorthak energy beam struck his ship's hull. The frigate Persistent Thunder was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it had already taken enough damage to destroy 3 vessels of its size, and it was still fighting. Damage report, Seojin called out over the noise of alarms and emergency systems. Port side armor is down to 30%, his tactical officer reported. We've lost 2 of the main railgun batteries. Life support is running on backup power. And we're still here, Seojin said with grim satisfaction. What's the status of the alien fleet? 4 of their ships are completely disabled. 2 more are retreating. The remaining 6 are still engaging our forces. Seojin nodded as he studied the tactical display. The Battle of New Busan had been just the beginning. Word of the human victory had spread quickly through both human and alien space, and the Vorthak had responded by sending a much larger fleet to what they thought would be an easy conquest. They had been wrong again. Captain, his communications officer called out, incoming transmission from the Vorthak flagship. Put it through. The screen showed a different alien commander this time, Admiral Vextar, younger than Kethvar, but just as arrogant. His reptilian features were twisted with frustration and anger. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. Your ship is clearly damaged beyond combat effectiveness. Seojin looked around his bridge. Half the control stations were sparking or completely dark. There was a hull breach on Deck 3 that his crew was still trying to seal. The artificial gravity was flickering on and off. By any reasonable standard, his ship should have been destroyed 20 minutes ago. Admiral, Seojin replied calmly, this ship is still capable of combat operations. Impossible. Our sensors show massive damage to your vessel. Your hull integrity is compromised. Your power, systems are failing. Your sensors are correct, Admiral. We are badly damaged. Seojin smiled. But we're still here, and we're still shooting at you. This was the thing the aliens could not understand about human engineering. Every human ship was built with the assumption that everything would go wrong at the worst possible moment. So, they built in backups for the backups, redundant systems for critical functions, and the ability to keep fighting even when most of the ship was destroyed. Helm, Seojin ordered. Bring us about. Target their lead cruiser. Sir, we only have 1 working railgun left. Then we make it count. The Persistent Thunder turned toward the Vorthak fleet, moving like a wounded animal that refused to die. Its remaining weapons locked onto the alien cruiser and fired. The railgun round punched through the cruiser's shields and tore a massive hole in its hull. Direct hit, the tactical officer reported. The cruiser is venting atmosphere. Admiral Vextar's face appeared on screen again, and this time he looked genuinely shocked. How is your ship still functional? Our weapons should have destroyed you. Your weapons are very impressive, Admiral, Seojin agreed. Very advanced. Very sophisticated, but they're designed to fight ships that stop working when you damage them. All ships stop working when sufficiently damaged. Human ships don't. Seojin gestured around his battered bridge. See, we don't build our ships to be perfect. We build them to be tough. When something breaks, we fix it or work around it. When systems fail, we have other systems to take their place. As if to prove his point, the lights on the bridge flickered and went out, only to be replaced a moment later by emergency lighting. Somewhere in the ship, his engineering crew had just rerouted power through backup circuits. This is why. You cannot defeat us, Vextar said, though he sounded less certain than before. You are primitives playing with tools you do not understand. Maybe. but we understand them well enough to keep them working when you try to break them. Across the battle space, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of human ships. The frigates, determined spirit and unbreakable will, were fighting back to back, their hulls punctured in multiple places, but their weapons still firing. The destroyer Defiant Stand had lost its main engines, but was using maneuvering thrusters to stay in the fight. And everywhere, human crews were doing what humans did best, adapting, improvising, and refusing to give up. Pilot Jian was having the time of her life. Her fighter squadron, call sign Meteor Squadron, was dancing through the alien formation like angry wasps. The Vorthak had energy weapons that could vaporize a fighter in one shot, but hitting a human pilot was proving to be much harder than expected. "Meteor leader to all fighters," she called over the radio. "Remember, these aliens think in straight lines. Use that against them." The human fighters were not as fast or as heavily armed as their alien counterparts, but they were more maneuverable and their pilots were more creative. While the Vorthak flew in precise formations and followed tactical doctrines, the humans flew like maniacs who had nothing to lose. "Meteor 3, you've got 2 bandits on your tail," Jian warned. "Roger, leader, watch this." Meteor 3 suddenly cut his engines and deployed drag chutes, causing his fighter to stop almost instantly in space. The 2 alien fighters shot past him, and before they could turn around, he had fired missiles into their engines. "Nice move, 3. Meteor 7, what's your status?" "I'm hit, leader. Engines are gone. Life support is failing. Can you make it back to the ship?" "Negative, but I'm still armed." Jian knew what that meant. "7, you don't have to." "Yes, I do, leader. Tell my family I was thinking of them." Meteor 7 turned his dying fighter toward the largest Vorthak ship and pushed his engines to maximum power. The alien saw him coming and tried to shoot him down, but it was too late. The fighter slammed into the alien cruiser's bridge at tremendous speed, and both exploded in a ball of fire. The radio was quiet for a moment. Then Meteor 5 spoke up. "For 7. "For 7, the squadron replied in unison. This was another thing the aliens had not expected. Human pilots who knew they were going to die did not eject or surrender. They looked for ways to take their enemies with them. On the Vorthak flagship, Admiral Vextar was watching his tactical display with growing alarm. His fleet had superior numbers, superior technology, and superior firepower. But the humans just would not stop fighting. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the destroyer Knight's Edge has been destroyed by a ramming attack. The cruiser, Dominion's Fist, has lost main engines to fighter attack. The frigate Galactic Pride is requesting permission to withdraw." "Withdraw? From primitives?" "Sir, they've lost over 60% of their crew to boarding actions." That was yet another surprise. When human ships got close enough to Vorthak vessels, they launched boarding parties. Not to capture the ships, human technology was not compatible with alien systems. They boarded to cause damage, to rescue prisoners, or simply to make the aliens fight on 2 fronts at once. Sergeant Kiwan was leading one such boarding party through the corridors of a Vorthak cruiser. His Marines were heavily armed and armored, but they were also drastically outnumbered. "Contact ahead," his point man reported. "Looks like a full security squad." "How many?" 20, maybe 25. Kaiwan's boarding party had 12 Marines. In any reasonable tactical situation, they should have retreated. Instead, Kaiwan grinned inside his helmet. "Remember, people, we're not here to win. We're here to make them hurt." He checked his weapons one more time. "Let's go make some noise." The firefight that followed was brief but intense. The aliens had energy weapons that could cut through human armor, but the humans had projectile weapons that could punch through alien cover. More importantly, the humans fought like they had nothing to lose. When Kiwan's squad ran out of ammunition, they switched to explosive charges. When they ran out of explosives, they used their armor's built-in weapons. When those failed, they fought with knives and bare hands. The aliens won the fight, but it cost them 20 minutes and half their security force. And by then, Kiwan's squad had destroyed 3 critical systems and damaged several others. "This is madness," one of the surviving Vorthak officers said to his commander. "These humans fight like animals." "No," the commander replied quietly. "They fight like humans. And that may be worse." Back on the Persistent Thunder, Captain Seojin was preparing for what he expected to be his ship's final battle. They had lost most of their systems, half their crew was wounded, and they were down to their last working weapon. "Captain," his Tactical officer said, "The alien flagship is moving to finish us off. Then we go out fighting." Seojin turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to all human forces. Tell them we held our ground." "Message sent, sir." "And put me through to the Vorthak flagship." Admiral Vexatar's face appeared on screen once more. This time he looked tired and frustrated. "Human captain, your ship is finished. Surrender now and your crew will be treated according to Dominion law." "That's generous of you, Admiral, but I'm afraid we'll have to decline." "Why?" "You cannot possibly win this fight." Seojun looked around his ruined bridge one more time. "Admiral, let me ask you something. How many ships did you bring to this battle?" 15 vessels of the line. "And how many do you have left?" Vextar was quiet for a moment. 7. 7. You lost more than half your fleet fighting a handful of human ships that you thought were primitives. Seojin smiled. "Tell me, Admiral, who really won this battle?" "The Ali." Fleet Admiral Sunho stood in the command center of the human flagship Unconquerable, watching the tactical displays that showed battles raging across a dozen star systems. 6 months had passed since the first encounter with the Vorthak, and the war had spread throughout human space like wildfire. The aliens had expected a quick conquest. Instead, they were getting a grinding, bloody campaign that was costing them ships and crews faster than they could replace them. "Status report," Sunho ordered. "The defense of New Seoul is holding," reported his intelligence chief, Dr. Yunji. "The Vorthak threw 3 fleets at it and were repelled with heavy losses. The Crystalline Collective tried to attack our mining operations in the Outer Rim, but they ran into our asteroid surprises." Sunho smiled at that. Human engineers had learned to hollow out asteroids and turn them into weapons platforms. The aliens kept falling for it because their scanners could not tell the difference between a real asteroid and a fake one. What about the ethereals? They attempted to use their mental abilities to control our ship crews during the Battle of New Tokyo. It didn't work out well for them. That was an understatement. The ethereals had tried to take over human minds, only to discover that human consciousness was apparently too chaotic and unpredictable for their mental powers to handle. Several ethereal ships had been destroyed when their crews suffered what could only be described as psychic feedback headaches. "And the swarm?" Analyst Jihoon looked up from his console. "The swarm tried to overwhelm the colony at New Daegu with sheer numbers. The colonists responded by releasing their own swarm." "Their own swarm?" "Maintenance robots, sir. Turns out that when you program 10,000 repair drones to attack anything that isn't human, they're quite effective against insect-like aliens." Admiral Sunho shook his head in amazement. Only humans would think to use maintenance equipment as weapons, but that was the pattern he was seeing throughout the war. Humans taking whatever they had available and turning it into something dangerous. "Sir," Dr. Yunji said, "I've been analyzing the alien combat reports that our intelligence network has intercepted. The pattern is becoming clear." "What pattern?" "They're learning to fear us. Look at these tactical assessments." She brought up a series of documents on the main screen. 6 months ago, Vorthak fleet commanders were requesting permission to attack human colonies with minimal forces. Now they're asking for triple redundancy and backup fleets. Jihoon nodded in agreement. "The Crystalline Collective has started avoiding human space entirely. They're calling us the Chaotic Ones and warning their ships to maintain distance. And the ethereals? They've classified humans as psychically dangerous and recommend against any mental contact. Apparently, trying to read human thoughts gives them migraines." Admiral Sunho walked over to the strategic display that showed the entire galactic situation. The Dominion controlled most of the galaxy, but the areas around human space were marked in red, contested zones where alien fleets faced constant harassment and attack. "They're learning that we don't fight like they do," he said thoughtfully. "Exactly, sir. They optimize for efficiency and elegance. We optimize for stubbornness and survival." Dr. Yunji pulled up more data. "For example, when a Vorthak ship loses 30% of its systems, it withdraws for repairs. When a human ship loses 30% of its systems, it keeps fighting. When an alien commander faces impossible odds, he looks for a way to escape with honor," Jihoon added. "When a human commander faces impossible odds, he looks for a way to take as many enemies with him as possible." This was the fundamental difference that the Dominion was struggling to understand. They had conquered 47 species by demonstrating overwhelming superiority, and accepting surrender. But humans did not seem to understand the concept of surrender. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "incoming priority transmission from Earth. Put it through." The screen showed President Minho in his office at United Earth Command. Behind him, through the windows, the lights of the planet's capital gleamed in the darkness. "Admiral Sunho, what's the current strategic situation?" "We're holding our ground, Mr. President. The aliens are taking heavy losses in every engagement, but they keep coming. They seem determined to crush human resistance regardless of cost. And our losses? Significant but sustainable. We're losing ships and people, but we're building new ones faster than we're losing them. More importantly, we're learning from every battle." President Minho nodded. "I've been receiving reports from across human space. Colony after colony is reporting successful defenses against alien attacks. The pattern seems consistent." "Yes, sir. The aliens keep underestimating us. They see our technology as primitive, so they assume our tactics and strategy are equally primitive. But they're not. No, sir. They're just different." Admiral Sunho gestured to the tactical displays around him. "Take the Battle of New Jeju. For example, the swarm attacked with 10,000 ships expecting to overwhelm our defenses through sheer numbers. And we let them into the system, then activated the minefield we'd been building for the past 3 months. Turns out that when you detonate enough nuclear mines simultaneously, even 10,000 ships have problems." President Minho was quiet for a moment. "How many mines?" 50,000, sir. We've been converting asteroids into weapons platforms throughout the system. When the swarm entered the engagement zone, we turned on the lights. Casualties? The swarm lost approximately 80% of their fleet. We lost 3 patrol boats that got too close to the explosions. This was becoming the standard pattern of human-alien engagements. The aliens would attack with what they considered overwhelming force, only to discover that humans had been preparing surprises for months or even years. "Admiral, I want you to explain something to me," President Minho said. "Why are we winning these battles? By every measure, these aliens should be superior to us." "They are superior, Mr. President. Their technology is more advanced, their ships are more powerful, and their weapons are more sophisticated." "Then why?" "Because they're fighting the war they want to fight, not the war we're giving them." Admiral Sunho pulled up a tactical analysis. "They want clean, decisive battles where superior technology determines the outcome. We're giving them messy, grinding fights where determination and preparation matter more than fancy equipment." Dr. Yunji stepped forward. "Mr. President, I've been studying alien psychology throughout this conflict. The key insight is that they don't understand human motivations." "Explain." "They assume that all intelligent species think like they do, that we make rational cost-benefit calculations and surrender when the odds become impossible. But humans don't work that way." "How do we work?" "We get stubborn. We get angry. We decide that if we're going to lose, we're going to make the other side pay for it." Dr. Yunji smiled. "In their terms, we're completely irrational. In our terms, we're being human." President Minho leaned back in his chair. "And this is sustainable?" "So far, yes, sir," Admiral Sunho replied. "Every battle costs them more than they expected to pay. Every victory comes with casualties they can't afford to lose. Every system they attack turns out to be more heavily defended than their intelligence suggested. Because every human colony is a fortress. Because every human colony is prepared for the worst-case scenario. We've been planning for alien invasion since we first detected signs of other civilizations. When they finally showed up, we were ready." Analyst Jahoon brought up a new display. "Mr. President, I've been tracking Dominion fleet movements over the past month. They're pulling ships from other sectors to reinforce their attacks on human space. Is that good or bad for us?" "It's complicated, sir. On one hand, they're concentrating more force against us. On the other hand, they're weakening their control over the rest of the galaxy." Admiral Sunho studied the strategic display with interest. "Are you saying other species are taking notice?" "Yes, sir. We're intercepting communications from species that haven't seen Dominion ships in their sectors for months. Some of them are starting to ask questions. This was an unexpected development. The Dominion's power had always been based on overwhelming superiority, the ability to crush any resistance before it could spread. But the human war was consuming so many resources that cracks were starting to appear elsewhere." "Mr. President," Admiral Sunho said, I think we may have inadvertently started something bigger than just human resistance. What do you mean? I mean that the Dominion is beginning to look less than invincible. And when bullies start to look weak, other people start to get ideas. President Minho was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. Admiral, what's your assessment of our long-term prospects? We can't win in the traditional sense, Mr. President. We don't have the numbers or the technology to conquer the Dominion. But we might not need to. Explain. We just need to make the cost of fighting us higher than the benefit of conquering us. We need to make them decide that leaving humanity alone is easier than trying to destroy us. Dr. Yunji nodded. And judging by their recent tactical changes, they're already starting to reach that conclusion. What kind of tactical changes? They're using more ships for the same objectives. They're taking longer to plan their attacks. They're requesting more intelligence before engaging human forces. The massive Galactic Dominion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, and Admiral Kethvar felt a surge of satisfaction as he looked at the tactical display. 250 warships of 47 different species, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Surely this would be enough to crush the human homeworld and end their stubborn resistance once and for all. All ships report ready for battle, Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Excellent. Begin the advance toward the third planet. Today we finish what we started. The alien fleet moved toward Earth like an unstoppable tide of metal and energy. Every species in the Dominion had contributed ships to this final assault. The Vorthak had brought their most powerful dreadnoughts. The Crystalline Collective had provided their geometric battleships. The Ethereals had sent their most advanced mental warfare vessels. Even the mysterious Silent Ones had emerged from their hidden territories to join the attack. This was not just a military operation. It was a statement to the entire galaxy that the Dominion's power was absolute and that resistance was futile. Earth, in the underground command bunkers beneath the United Nations Defense Command, President Minho was having a very different conversation with his military leaders. Status of the orbital defenses? He asked Admiral Soman. All platforms are online and ready, Mr. President. The aliens can see our basic defensive satellites, but they have no idea about the real firepower we have hidden in the asteroid belt. General Wan Shik, the grizzled commander of the Planetary Defense Corps, was studying multiple tactical displays. Sir, our deep space monitoring stations confirm the alien fleet composition. They brought everything they have. All of it? Every major warship from every Dominion species. They're not taking any chances this time. President Minho nodded slowly. This was exactly what human strategists had hoped would happen. For months, human forces throughout the galaxy had been conducting what appeared to be desperate defensive actions. Colony after colony had fought fierce battles against alien forces, inflicting heavy casualties, but ultimately falling back toward the core systems. To the Dominion, it looked like the human resistance was finally cracking. What they did not realize was that every retreat had been carefully planned. Every withdrawal had been designed to draw more and more alien forces toward this moment. Mr. President, Admiral Somin said, incoming transmission from the alien fleet. Put it through. The main screen showed Admiral Kethvar, looking older and more tired than he had during their first encounter. Behind him, the command centers of dozens of other species were visible in split-screen displays. Human leader, Kethvar began. I am Admiral Kethvar, commanding the Grand Fleet of the Galactic Dominion. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Your scattered forces cannot reach you in time. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to serve the Dominion as a client race. President Minho looked around the command center at his staff. Several of them were struggling to keep straight faces. Admiral Kethvar, Minho replied, I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid we'll have to decline. You cannot win this battle, human. We have brought the combined might of 47 civilizations to your doorstep. Your primitive homeworld cannot possibly stand against us. You're probably right about that, Admiral. President Minho sat back in his chair. Tell me, though, how many ships did you bring? 250 vessels of the line, the most powerful fleet ever assembled. That's impressive. And how many ships do you think you'll need to destroy Earth? Kethvar looked puzzled by the question. Our strategists estimate that 50 ships would be sufficient to overwhelm your planetary defenses. 50. So why did you bring 250? Because the Dominion believes in overwhelming force. We do not take chances with primitive species that have proven troublesome. President Minho started to smile. Troublesome? Is that what we are? Your species has shown an irrational tendency to resist superior force. This ends today. You know what, Admiral? You're absolutely right. This does end today. President Minho's smile was getting wider. But probably not the way you expect. The transmission ended, and President Minho turned to his staff. Are our guests in position? Yes, Mr. President, Admiral Somin confirmed. All human fleets are holding at the designated coordinates just outside sensor range. General Wanshik checked his displays. The alien fleet is moving into the engagement zone. They should be in optimal position in approximately 15 minutes. President Minho nodded. The plan was beautifully simple, which was exactly the kind of plan humans excelled at. For months, human forces had been retreating toward Earth, making it appear that the human government was pulling all available ships back to defend the homeworld in a desperate last stand. In reality, they had been positioning the largest fleet in human history in carefully concealed locations throughout the solar system. Mr. President, the communications officer announced, we're receiving check-in calls from all fleet elements. Put Admiral Sunho through. The screen showed the commander of the human fleet broadcasting from his flagship hidden behind one of Jupiter's moons. Mr. President, all forces are in position and ready to proceed. What's our tactical situation, Admiral? The alien fleet is exactly where we want them, clustered together in the center of the system, focused on Earth, with their backs to empty space. Admiral Sunho smiled grimly. They have no idea that they're surrounded. This was the trap that had been months in the making. The Dominion fleet thought they were attacking a desperate human homeworld defended by whatever ships could be scraped together for a final battle. Instead, they were flying into the middle of the largest ambush in galactic history. Begin Operation Homecoming, President Minho ordered. Throughout the Sol system, human ships that had been hiding behind asteroids, moons, and gas giant rings suddenly activated their engines and weapons systems. The seemingly empty space around the Dominion fleet erupted with contacts as stealth fields dropped and sensor jammers shut down. On the alien flagship, chaos erupted as the tactical displays suddenly showed enemy vessels in every direction. Admiral! The tactical officer shouted. We're reading massive enemy contacts. They're everywhere. Admiral Kethavar stared at the display in disbelief. Moments ago, his fleet had been advancing on a poorly defended planet. Now they were surrounded by more human ships than intelligence reports had said existed. How many? He demanded. At least 800 ships, sir. Maybe more. They're still appearing on sensors. This was impossible. Every Dominion intelligence report had indicated that the humans had fewer than 300 ships total. The fleet attacking Earth should have represented the majority of human naval forces. Sir, the communications officer reported. Incoming transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. Admiral Sunho appeared on screen, and he was openly grinning. Admiral Kethvar, this is Admiral Sunho of the United Earth Defense Force. You seem to have wandered into our territory. This is a trap, Kethvar snarled. No, Admiral, this is an invitation. Sunho gestured around him at the bridge of his flagship. You wanted to see human military capabilities. You wanted to test our resolve. You wanted to find out what happens when you threaten our families and our homes. The tactical display showed the human fleet moving into attack formation. Ships emerged from behind asteroids like predators emerging from hiding. Battle groups that had been scattered across the galaxy for months suddenly revealed themselves to be part of a single, coordinated plan. You brought the combined might of 47 civilizations to destroy one human world, Admiral Sunho continued. That was your first mistake. What was our second mistake? Kethavar asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. Thinking that Earth was undefended. As if summoned by his words, the space around Earth suddenly came alive with defensive platforms, weapons satellites, and hidden fortifications. What had appeared to be a simple planetary defense grid revealed itself to be one of the most heavily fortified positions in the galaxy. Your third mistake, Admiral Sunho said, was assuming that human ships scattered throughout the galaxy were actually scattered. They were positioned, Admiral. Every retreat, every withdrawal, every defensive action, it was all designed to get you exactly where we wanted you. Admiral Kethvar felt a chill run down his spine.